Hello, Bothell City Council is back in session. Apologies for that long extended executive session. So we had rearranged the visitor comments so that people that were here for visitor comments wouldn't have to wait. But we have a gentleman who came to speak based on the old schedule. So if it's all right with everyone, I thought we'd give him an opportunity to speak. Please come forward. So you can go to the podium, and then you have 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself, too.
Hi, my name is Anirudh Jagannath, and I live in the north side of Bothell near Tambo Creek Park with my wife and 5-year-old son. And I work for a software company in Bellevue. And in my free time, I volunteer my time, to serve the community by offering meditation and mindfulness sessions to help relieve stress of individuals. We use simple breathing techniques that allow, people to lead happier lives. We had a session actually with Bothell Police as well last year with Carol Cummings. And yeah, so and if you'd like a session, I do complimentary sessions throughout Washington in many universities, and if you ever want to have a session, I'd be most welcome. And the reason I'm here today is, today is World Environment Day, and the theme for this year, as you all know, is to beat plastic pollution. And the single-use plastic bags have been, noted as one of the biggest polluters of the planet, with more than 200 billion plastic bags being used all around the world. I know we already have some plastic bag recycling facilities in Bothell, and for this year, I wanted to request if the council could consider, banning plastic bags in Bothell. The city of Issaquah has banned plastic bags, and I think there's another, Port Angeles is considering implementing it. This would be such a big benefit to the community and to the world as well. So my question is there any plan to implement a single-use plastic bag ban? And if not, could we consider implementing that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't usually engage in that conversation, but if you want to leave your contact information with the city manager in pink over there, I might reach out for some meditation, just saying.
Sure.
I don't know anyone who couldn't use more mindfulness. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are moving on the agenda to council committee reports. Does anyone have Councilmember Agnew?
Yes, we met last week at the EMS Advisory Task Force. All the subcommittees got together and gave their recommendations. Our recommendation in the Regional Services Subcommittee was to improve the workforce issues with recruitment and more diversity in the workforce, to work on wellness programs to help retain the first responders that are out there that see multiple traumatic episodes and try to help them out. They're a valuable resource, and we'd rather like to keep them there. We talked about the Vulnerable Population Initiative, where we've used the University of Washington to try to reach out to some of the people that really don't reach out to 911, find out why, and try to overcome that. They've also taught quite a few CPR classes. I think around 12,000 individuals have received CPR training for that. Then there was 2 initiatives that we endorsed, and for some reason King County EMS loves mnemonics. One's AEIOU, and what it does actually is when we first started in EMS, you'd see a patient, you treat the patient, you take the patient to the hospital, and then a couple hours later you'd call the hospital to find out, was I right? Did everything I do, was it right? Well, we did that till HIPAA came along, and HIPAA stopped that. So we lost the communication with the hospitals. So we're trying to implement a software device to where the first responders, whether they're EMTs or whether they're paramedics, can initiate some care, can move it on, It can go in and transfer into the hospital and move through the units. And those people can look at that information and find out, was the stroke center activated in time? Did we do this right? Did we do that right? Is there a fentanyl problem that we're having now? And the software that we're looking at right now will clear a lot of those issues up. So we're really looking forward to that. And then the other was Strive, and King County EMS Online has been there for 20-some years, and nobody's ever changed the platform. And I don't think anybody's got a computer at their house that's 20 years old. You probably don't even have a refrigerator unless it's in the garage. So it is time to improve that software to give our EMTs quality education, because as I said in the meeting, they're the foundation of Medic One. They're the ones, the nuts and bolts of this whole program. So we asked that they look at those. We're going to take them back. We're going to crunch some numbers and send it back to them. But, you know, I think we're moving along. I think the budget looks good. We're going to go for an August of next year date for the Levy One, or Medic One levy renewal on the ballot. And hopefully we'll have it at a decent percent to where there won't be a whole lot of tax fatigue on that one.
Thank you. I'm really interested in the feedback, because I always think feedback is so key to getting better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Does anyone else have council committee reports? Councilmember Olson.
So I'm on the Snohomish County Board of Health, and an issue that's, or a topic that's coming up to us right now is there's a needle exchange up in Everett that is kind of running autonomously right now, and they're looking to become affiliated with the health district up there. So the health district is considering a proposal where the Snohomish County Health District assumes oversight of the needle exchange. And so there was an editorial in the Everett Herald just recently, May 13th, about that. It was sent out to the council for your information just earlier today. But I also went up and visited the needle exchange one afternoon and spoke with the two staff up there, Sherry and Matt, and learned a lot about it. And they're doing a lot of good for the community up there, especially with the opioid epidemic that's going on. And they're really trying to improve conditions for people that have these drug addictions, trying to build a relationship with him, get him into treatment, and just minimize the harm they're doing. It's a needle exchange where they have to bring in needles to get clean needles, so it's kind of reducing the number of needles that end up in parks. They're not getting thrown away or just discarded. So it was very eye-opening, and it's a continuing discussion in the health district, but I just wanted to bring it up and let you know that this is something, because I asked, and there are some people in the south end of Snohomish, King County, Bothell, Linwood, that they do service, because they do also come out into the field a couple days a week. So thank you.
Is there any, are there any studies as far as the cost savings by the needle exchange? Obviously the needles cost money, but in terms of the cost to public health if there aren't needle exchanges?
Yes, the editorial lists a couple of these, and also just speaking with the staff up there, just eliminating a visit to the ER has just that, negating that cost right there, just for the cost of a nickel a needle or so. If they can reduce just reducing that medical visit, because a lot of these people, that is their medical service that they go visit. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, I think it's important for people to understand it's not just giving needles for the fun of it, but it's actually meant to save the public money.
Yes. Yeah. Reduce the number of needles out there in circulation.
Thank you. So moving on, I think we're at consent agenda. Councilmember McAuliffe had pulled something, but it's a Scrivener's error, so that will be fixed and put in the permanent record. So I don't think we need to go into that. Do I have a motion to pass the consent agenda?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember McNeil, seconded by Councilmember Agnew. You ready for us? Okay, please vote. Motion passes unanimously with Mayor Ream absent and excused. And we are on to public hearing, AB 18087. Public hearing to consider adoption of a resolution approving the 2019-2024 six-year transportation improvement program. And I think just by saying it, I've officially opened the public hearing. I don't have any notes here on how that goes, so please correct me if I get it wrong. And Steve Morikawa is presenting.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm here to talk to you about the 2019-2024 Transportation Improvement Program. We call it the TIP or the TIP. What I'd like to do, this presentation is basically briefly go over the process and how it relates to the capital facility plan and the comprehensive plan. Discuss any changes to the TIP since last year's version, and then show you a sampling of pictures because, you know, it's kind of an exciting time for Bothell. There's some cool infrastructure projects that are going on. We're fixing roadways, we're designing some sidewalks, and we're working with Sound Transit and Community Transit to try to get more transit service in Bothell. I will apologize up front if I cough or sniffle. I have an allergy and a little cold going on here, so please bear with me. So in your staff report, your packet discusses the TIP in the context with our city comprehensive plan and the capital facilities plan. The capital facilities plan is often called the CFP abbreviation. Because we include transportation projects in our CFP, the TIP, or the transportation plan, is somewhat redundant. However, we need it because it's required by law to be updated every year by July 1st. And some grant agencies require that grant-funded projects, the applications, those projects are in the TIP. Please note that the council can actually update the TIP as many times per year as they want, as long as they meet the minimum one time per year before July 1st. So every 2 years, we go through a rigorous public committee and council process to develop our CFP, which, in addition to the transportation projects, includes other capital needs like parks, utilities, and facilities. Because the CFP is a 2-year adoption cycle to match our 2-year budget cycle, it doesn't quite meet the yearly need of the law that we have to submit the TIP. We have already started the CFP process for this year. We've had a public input process with an open house. We have gathered information online from people. And the CFP is targeted to be adopted in the fall of this year in time to be included in the 2019-2020 budget discussion for the next 2-year cycle. So the TIP in your packet is staff's best shot at what it will look like after the CFP process is completed in the fall. If council has suggestions, it's recommended that we use the CFP process to incorporate them into the CFP. That's kind of our prioritization process and how we figure out our funding process. Once we complete the CFP, I'll be back in early 2019 again with the TIP for the next year, and that'll match the CFP. So it should look alike at that point. So this is the 2019-2024 TIP list in your packet. This list is actually what gets sent to the state by July 1st to meet our requirements. But the TIP actually consists of a resolution, this list of projects. We briefly describe each project in the TIP in your packet, and we actually also maintain a transportation needs list. So the projects that are not partially funded or fully funded that don't show up in the 6-year work window are on a list that we maintain to make sure we don't lose track of transportation projects that we feel are needed. So please note that one of the differences between the TIP and the CFP is that our capital programs are not listed in the CFP. So programs are ongoing annual work versus one-time discrete projects. So we have, as an example, a bridge maintenance inspection program, we have a pavement preservation program, and we have a sidewalk program and others. Once a project such as a sidewalk project is identified, prioritized, and funding found, it's listed separately than the program for tracking purposes. You can see this list on the bottom of that, the TIP list is, 15A and 16A and those lists there. So as an example, item 16 is the sidewalk program. So that lists all our funding and our budget over the 6-year period for the entire sidewalk program. But what you'll see in 16A through E are a list of specific sidewalk projects that will be occurring over this 6-year period that we think. The first 3 are basically ones we already obtained federal grants for, and the last 2, as an example, are ones that we're applying this year for federal grants for. So we list them specifically so you know what's going to happen. But they are part of item 16, which is the entire sidewalk program. So what we're basically doing is trying to use our funds in the program to leverage grant funds. So remember that this is a planning document, and the actual funding approval is through the biennial budget process. Okay. So what I'd like to do is kind of, again, it's in your packet, but kind of go through and tell you some of the changes from last year. So we've removed some projects because they've either been completed or they're going to be completed this year. And there are about 5 of those. Multiway Boulevard Phase 2, which this is a photo of. Adaptive Signal Control System Phase 1, which they're currently in construction right now. We're going to do a little bit of a rock repair, a very small project north of 190th along the Bothell Way. We're going to pave. We got some federal grant funding on 228 between 19th and 35th. And we're actually putting in pedestrian crossing beacons at Beardsley and 185th. That's scheduled for this summer. So those projects won't appear in the next year's TIP because they'll be completed by the end of this year. We removed several projects. Every 2 years or 2 to 3 years, we have an opportunity to file for grant applications through the federal process. And these are 3 projects that the last cycle, a couple of years ago, we put in to try to compete for federal funds, and unfortunately, they didn't get federal funds. Now they are not quite as high in the priority list because we've gone through a sidewalk prioritization process with a task force with schools in the North Shore School District. And these 3 are probably ones we're not going to rise to the top at this point. And they didn't score as well as we had hoped as well through the grant process. I will note that item 2, though, is sidewalk on 19th and 242nd. We did get federal funds for 19th and 232nd. So a portion of this project was kind of overlapped. And again, that was kind of a grant strategy we had. There are 3 projects that we kind of reconfigured or renamed. The first one, we actually had 2 projects. If you can imagine Beardsley Boulevard and 185th intersection by the fire station, there's supposed to be intersection improvements there. And there's also supposed to be a northeast 185th reconstruction along that entire corridor to set it up for transit. We've combined the 2 into 1, so it kind of falls into line with the Sound Transit 3 package, which would all occur in one fell swoop anyway. So we're just aligning it up. The second one is we tried to go for a design grant from 524 to 522 along the 527 corridor 2 to 3 years ago. We didn't get that grant. So what we've done this year is we focused it down a little. We think we'll compete better. And we're actually going to try to do the portion between 240th and Reeder, a widening project. And we're trying to get grant funding so we can go through there. The 240th Meridian Compact Roundabout project, we went after safety funds. We didn't get it last time. We're tossing our name in a hat again. We figured out that probably a traffic signal is going to be a little bit more efficient and not as costly as a roundabout. And we're keeping that one, but renaming that one. There's one project that we actually removed from the TIP, and it's because this is part of the Sound Transit process. There's going to be a park and ride somewhere in downtown Bothell. And we thought perhaps we might lead the siting process of this. But as it turns out, Sound Transit is going to lead that. So really, it's effectively a Sound Transit project. So we removed it from our program. But we're going to participate, obviously. There are 6 projects which we've added. The first 2 are overlay projects, and we've added them because we think they're going to score well, and we have a potential to get federal grants to leverage our own streets and levee pavement preservation money. 9th Sidewalk and 130th, well, let me start with 9th Sidewalk. We're going to go after a Safe Routes to School grant, again, to leverage our levee sidewalk money with federal money. I'll skip number 4, go to number 5. We're working with Woodinville. They're going to partner with us on a local match, and we're going for a Safe Routes to School grant as well. Downtown non-motorized access. We think at the end of the Sound Transit exercise, we've kind of done some work on Main Street. We've done some work on 185th, but some of our north-south roads, the sidewalks are in very poor condition. The ADA ramps are in poor condition. So we've packaged something together to see if we can get a federal grant for that. Item 6, we're not asking for money in the short term, but what I wanted to do was put this on. This is the 102nd Avenue Bridge out here is our highest need in terms of bridge replacement. We did some work on it years back to get the load level up, to fix it and keep it going for a while, but we anticipate within 6 to 10 years it probably needs to be replaced. So what we'd like to do is just put it in everybody's mind so we can start thinking about that. Typically what we do is we go after federal funds for bridge replacement, but the city will have to provide a match at that point. So we're hoping that this kind of elevates it a little and starts you thinking about 6 to 10 years from now. So next steps, if you approve the TIP tonight, what we'll do is basically submit the list to the state. We'll complete the public process and a CFP process in the fall, and then I'll come back to you again in January, and we'll adopt the next year's TIP, which will look exactly like the CFP, and then we'll start the process all over again. It's kind of a 2-year process. So that's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Who has questions? Councilmember Zorns.
Real quick question. This was fun to watch, seeing Bothell being tended to in ways that people are always asking, and seeing that you're very mindful of Bothell as a whole. You mentioned that Woodinville is going to be partnering on safe routes. Is that just for Crystal Springs, or are they looking to expand to their other schools?
For that particular roadway, 130th and 132nd Place or something like that, it's interesting, but the border kind of jogs in and out of that roadway.
Okay.
So we would take care of what jogs in our roadway, they would take care of what jogs in their roadway, and there's some gaps in the sidewalks there.
Okay.
So they've agreed that it's very important for that elementary school, Woodin Elementary School, and there's a high school nearby.
Okay, awesome.
Yep, to try to fill in those gaps, and so we're gonna partner together and try to get a grant to do that.
Is that going to help? Because I know Woodin has traffic problems with parents queuing up to come pick their kids up. Is that going to help soften that impact at all, or?
Not sure, only if the sidewalk attracted enough kids that it reduced the amount of people there. I think probably the traffic issue and circulation from a traffic point of view would have to be
Is a
addressed
separate
separately.
issue?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Who else has questions? Anyone? Okay. Well, I have one question about projects removed because they did not receive grant funding and new grant applications were not being submitted. I was just wondering what happens to those projects. So those include Meridian Avenue South pedestrian and bicycle improvements, 19th Avenue pedestrian bicycle improvements, and Bothell Way sidewalk. I was just curious, if we don't get grants, do they just go away? Might they come back? What happens to them?
So generally for sidewalk projects, we have a program and we have 2 ways of prioritizing our projects. We have Safe Routes to School levy money, and we had the task force get together with representatives from the school, North Shore School District, and they came up with 3 or 4 tiers of priorities. And we're already pretty good working our way through the first tier, their highest priority. So if these projects don't land in those tiers, likely it'll get back into our list because we have a total sidewalk inventory that we're trying to update. We're getting closer, so we know where the gaps are, and we try to prioritize them with a rating system. If they don't rise to the top, there's just not enough money to build all the sidewalks we need and all the gaps in all the streets in the city. So unfortunately, some of these may not rise up. It's interesting, the Bothell Highway one, or the Bothell Way one, north of 190th. Really, that one was because we recognized there's some apartments north of 190th on the east side that really can't get into the town. So we thought if we could get a grant, that could be a low-hanging fruit thing. What will happen with that one likely is we're going to have to design money to widen Bothell Way from there all the way up to 240th, and that would include bike lanes and sidewalks. So if we get that grant funding, that essentially covers that piece. It's going to have to wait a few years until the entire road project is able to be funded to do that, or phases of it. So we think we've addressed that one.
Okay. Yep, just curious. Thank you for the presentation. I'm amazed by how much work it takes just to tell us what you already know needs to happen. So anyone else have questions, or I will entertain a motion.
I make the motion that we adopt the proposed resolution approving the 2019-2024 six-year transportation improvement program.
Second.
So motion made by Councilmember Agnew and seconded by Councilmember McNeil. Please place your votes. Motion passes unanimously with Mayor Rayum absent and excused. And we are now moving up to AB 18088, the Public Safety Update. And here to present is Deputy City Manager, or Assistant City Manager, I guess, Tori Brazidis.
Thank you very much. All right. I think it. Well, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor and members of the City Council. So we're back for Public Safety Update number 3 in your series. Wanted to give you a little bit of background information as to what we've done up to this date, the kind of direction that we would be seeking from you at this meeting tonight, and then we'll move on to the content.
I'm so sorry. Can we pause for one moment? I had a request for a break, and before you get too far, I'm wondering if it'd be better to do it right now. Okay, I apologize, but I realize this is our last item, and it's 2 hours long. So let's reconvene at 8:15.
Thank you.